Please remain standing while my chaplain says a few words. Thank you. Okay, please be seated, and if Arthur could come over here, I've got a small gift. Arthur's the first chaplain to ever do it for 2 years in a row. So thank you for your help over the last 2 years. But it's a small, it's a mess.
Oh, fantastic. Great.
Thank you for doing all the work.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Who's doing your proposal? Okay, well, I'll deal with that. That's right. Okay. Well, my first duty tonight is to call for nominations for the office of Mayor for 2018-2019. I understand the person that was going to nominate is unfortunately at the funeral at the moment, so a member is standing in for this evening to do it. So can I ask Gary Watts to please nominate, and the speeches are next week. Thank you. And can I call for seconder? Councillor, I believe Cubitt.
It gives me great pleasure to second the appointment of Councillor Sean Keating.
Okay. And as my final duty as Mayor, is that agreed?
Yeah, you're on. You're on, Jack.
Councillor Sean Keating, can I now ask you to read and accept the Mayor's Declaration of Acceptance of Office?
Thank you very much. I, Sean Keating, having been elected to the office of Mayor of Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council, declare that I take upon that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the Code of Conduct which is expected of members in the Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council, dated the 10th of May 2018. There you are.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, we haven't got time to much fanfare, so we'll just get on with the business. The next item is my pleasure to ask for nominations for new Deputy Mayor. I will have a proposal. Terry?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's a very great honour and a very great pleasure to nominate Councillor Diane Taylor for the office of Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. And who's on the second? Jane, do you want to say a few words? So is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And we'll wait a few moments, if you don't mind. Oh, that didn't work. Nappy pins. Thank you, Paul. Hello.
How do you do?
Welcome.
Okay.
Councillor Diane Taylor, can I please get you to read and accept the Deputy Mayor's declaration of acceptance of office?
Thank you very much. I, Diane Taylor, having been elected to the office of Deputy Mayor of the Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of the Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, are you ready for work? Let's go forward. Apologies for absence. I've got one apology for absence, and that's from my nominator, Colin Regan, who's unfortunately attending a burial visit today. Diane, you're that's it.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to give apologies for Councillor Tucker and both Councillors Robinson, please. Sorry, Mr Mayor, Councillor Tucker and both Councillors Robinson. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Cooper.
Any declarations of interest to declare? No, thank you. The minutes of the last meeting held on the 22nd of March 2018. I'll move them as a correct record. Is that agreed? Councillor Cousins?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A very small amendment on announcements. I'd like to thank the outgoing Mayor for congratulating my wife and I on the birth of our second son, but he named my firstborn. So that's fine, it's not a problem. So it should be Luca, L-U-C-A. Thank you.
What page is that on?
Page 8932 of the minutes book.
Oh, we've got that over here. Eight nine three two. Well, okay.
9117B.
Luca.
L-U-C-A.
L.
L-O-U-C-A.
C. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Cousins. Anything else in the minutes? Are they agreed? Thank you. The come now to Mayor's announcements. I have a few, just a small one or two. I stand because I wanted to pay tribute to our fellow councillors, Councillor Nigel Pearce. He's been a stalwart in the Labour Party and a stalwart champion of the rights and protections needed for people that work and live in Buckskin. He was an exemplary councillor, and we will all miss him. We do have a very good replacement, and we're grateful for that. So, if you don't mind, if you will stand for a minute silence, please. How to do that? Hey, yeah. Thank you. What I would like to do now is to invite each of the three main political parties to nominate a speaker to say a few words about Nigel. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not easy to stand and not get really emotional thinking of Nigel, to be honest with you. There's a tear to my eye every time I do think about him, because the man was not just a colleague in this council chamber, he was my friend. And he was friends of many people in this council chamber, and he did us proud. He did this borough proud. And he was a man that stood by his community, a man that believed what he believed in wholeheartedly, and he gave everything he had to those charities, those groups, the things that he had passion for in his life. His faith was important to him. It's very important that ran through his life, and it was there for him at the end in respect of how important it was to him. The community was important to him, whether it be the Haymarket, first meeting Nigel when the Haymarket calling took place years and years and years ago, and seeing him come in and represent and speak for that particular organisation in the way he did, so eloquently, so passionately, what he did for the Camrose and the homeless in our town, the way he stood by all the church charities that he was involved with and the church organisations that were a big part of his life. There's all of that going on around him in terms of the things in the borough that he was involved with. But he never forgot Buckskin. He was there when the floods were. He was there in and out of the Ridgeway Centre supporting the community groups in the ward. He was very much somebody that took the role of being a councillor very seriously and performed it faultlessly in that respect. I think in terms of the man, I just want to say he made you laugh. He was fun. His Christmas parties were renowned and his performances at them were quite something. He had such an outgoing love of the performing arts in every way, in shape and form, and he loved to be part of it in every way. He was a caring man. I think that came across. He was always there when you needed him. He was always there with advice, right or wrong. He was always there to be when you needed that shoulder to cry on as much as that shoulder to kick you up the rear end to get on with it. He was always a man who gave himself for everything he did. And I have so much respect for him and everything he was. He was a family man, and his family will sorely miss him, as we will. And, you know, we support them today as well, and wholeheartedly our heart goes out to Julie and the children, wholeheartedly. I just want to say he was my friend, and I'm going to miss him terribly.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Diane Taylor, my Deputy Mayor, is speaking on behalf of the Conservative group tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo everything that Paul has said about Nigel. He's been a friend of my husband and me for 25 years now. We first met him when he put on a musical production depicting the Christmas story, typical of Nigel. And we quickly discovered that he's someone who has the great gift of getting things done. He just has an amazing ability. Whatever thing he took up, he would be really effective. And you knew he wasn't just going to warm a seat, he was going to jolly well do something. Until Nigel became a councillor, our association with him didn't revolve at all around politics, although his somewhat left-of-centre views did sometimes surface. But political views should never get in the way of friendship, and I strongly believe that. I believe that as a councillor. Our political views should never interfere with our friendships, which is a separate thing, and it certainly didn't in our case with Nigel, even though we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Nigel would always think big. That word big comes into so many of these different tributes to him. And after establishing his Signpost Theatre Company, he undertook all sorts of projects. And the word I would say is fearlessly. He was fearless in the things that he undertook. As Paul says, his love of all things theatrical is very well known. And he has an extremely talented family, as we heard at his Thanksgiving. He was also, again, as Paul says, famed for his hospitality. And we'll all greatly miss his Christmas parties. The Pierce Christmas parties were something to attend if you possibly could. They would always be themed around a particular type of food. He was a great foodie. And as Paul says, there would always be an entertainment, often by Nigel himself, and it would round off with hearty singing of Christmas carols. It was a wonderful way to start the festive season. So just in closing, as you know, he was a man of great faith, and he approached the end of his life in his usual fearless fashion. Nigel's friends and colleagues will miss his humour, his hospitality, his ability to make a difference, and simply his big, confident character. God bless Nigel.
Thank you. Do you want to? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hearing my colleagues, Councillor Harvey and Councillor Mrs. Taylor, speak of Nigel, I knew of Nigel in the early days through his work at the Haymarket Theatre and his involvement with the Haymakers and through church life. And so, on a personal front, for me, Nigel was a person who, when they're no longer with you, you think, that's somebody I wish I had known better, had spent more time with. He was certainly a person who had a presence and a considerable degree of flamboyancy. There could be a firmness in committee discussions, but that would always be balanced by a sense of fairness. Nigel won't just be missed for his sometimes mischievous sense of fun, but for sincerity and a strong belief in the responsibility for carrying out the duties of representing the interests of his residents. I think probably summing up, Nigel was a doer and definitely will be missed.
I understand that Councillor Tilbury wants to say a word. Thank you.
Yes, I'm fortunate for the last few years to have been Nigel's vice chair of calling on scrutiny, and as I said, his sense of humour could get you through anything. But I first met Nigel back in the days of the Haymarket, the 2006 calling, when he asked my help regarding the now infamous calling. But One thing that stuck in my mind is, you know, again, as we said, he's fearless. He fought for what he believed in there. But the one thing I really remember, we attended, myself, my family, my 3 young children, well, they were at that time, they're all they're all grown up now, attended the very last ever performance at the Haymarket, at the Performing Theatre, which was The Borrowers, which was had to be seen to be believed, you know, because I mean, it's easy to do a CGI on a film in Hollywood, but to put it on a stage, the difference between the very small people and the very large people was absolutely brilliant. My children were transfixed. At the end of the performance, we went outside and we met Nigel in the bar, and he was talking to the children, asking what they thought of it. And at the end of this, speaking to them, he grabbed the programme off of my oldest child, disappeared. We've seen him again for a while. About 20 minutes later, he came back and he got the programme and he got every single member of the cast to sign it for them. And I think that's the point. A lot of other people at that point, this is the last performance, had just gone to the bar and drunk the bar dry. Not Nigel. You know, he was still at that point, his thoughts were for the next generation. And a few years later, two of my younger children were involved with the theatre, the Fluid Motion Theatre one. They were putting a performance on down in Winchester and ran into Nigel down there, by which time he was a councillor by this time. And again, he asked them how they were doing. And that's the difference. That's the sort of person he was. He had a genuine interest in people, and he will be sorely missed, I think, by everybody. There's not many people like Nigel in this world, sadly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
One last word from Councillor Tony Jones.
Yeah, I can't top what everybody said because it's exactly true. But the reason I've got up is for buckskin. We've all been through an election, and some of us politicians aren't that well liked when you go to some of the doors. But the thing was, at this election, people were sad to lose him. He'd done a great job. That's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just have one announcement for members. Mr. Mayor, I would advise members that Kevin Jaquest, Executive Director of Finance and Resources, will be leaving the Council towards the end of June to take early retirement after 24 years' service at Basingstoke-Dean. Kevin is not here this evening due to attendance at a meeting out of the borough. However, he will be at full Council next week on the 17th of May 2018 for mayor making. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is question from the public, and there are no questions from the public. The following item is petitions. We do not have any petitions this evening. The next item is election of the leader of the council. I'm looking for a nomination. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to nominate Councillor Sanders.
Seconder, Councillor Terry Reid. That it? No speech?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that I wholeheartedly second the nomination.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Congratulations, Clive. You're now the leader. Would you like to take the opportunity to notify the council of your cabinet members, please?
That's very kind of you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure congratulations is the right word. The membership of the cabinet has miraculously appeared on the order paper, even though there was no leader of the council to make it appear. It was quite amazing. Ability to produce stuff in Reading. Anyway, it is exactly the same as it was last year, and Councillor Mrs. Reid will continue as Deputy Leader.
I think it would be in order, if you don't mind my saying so, for you to read it out for the record, if you don't mind.
I'm only too happy to do so.
Thank you.
So, in no particular order other than this is the order it's written down here. Deputy Leader, Councillor Mrs. Reid. The Cabinet Member for Finance, Service Delivery and Improvement, Councillor Tate. The Cabinet Member for Property and Development, Councillor Isett. The Cabinet Member for Communities and Community Safety, Councillor Bound. The Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure, Councillor Raffel. The Cabinet Member for Regulatory Services and the Environment, Councillor Ms Eachus. And finally, last but by absolutely no means least, the Cabinet Member for Digital Inclusion, Innovation and Inclusion, Councillor Ms Goldie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We come now to the next item, which is the allocation of seats to political groups. This is where the council has to be proportionately fixed. I understand Councillor Harvey has an amendment. Would you like to do it now, please?
You need to have the report first, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry,
So it's leader to propose first and then councillor.
it's my first mistake. Councillor Saunders, you have a proposal to make about proportionality?
Yes, Mr Mayor, there was a paper circulated on this particular subject, laying out the various details on the requirements for proportionality, along with a calculation prepared by officers at the back as Appendix 1, with a proposed allocation of seats, which I would recommend to Council with one minor modification, and that is that the vacant seat, which is currently shown against audit and accounts, should actually be moved to be against licensing. That, therefore, by doing so, pretty much keeps the proportionality exactly the same as it was last year, and allows for any changes subsequently, but also meets the requirements, I think, of most groups to the seats which they would wish to have and have been entitled to. So that would be my proposal, simply to move that up from audit and accounts as on under point 3 on page 15 of the update, for audit and accounts, the one under vacant, from there to go against licensing instead. I am aware that Councillor Harvey would like to keep it as it is, but I would hope, Mr Mayor, that this will probably meet most of his requirements by doing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, my amendment is incredibly simple, and the amendment is that the committee structure and proportionality and process remains as was last year. No more complicated than that. The essence is really to continue the theme that the leader has already just set out. Himself as the leader, his cabinet as it was last year. There is no need, in the instance of these committees, to change them, for the simple reason, not just the fact that we've got an all-out election next year, not just because we'll be revisiting this within the 12-month period. It makes life simpler and more direct for our officers. It is proportionately reasonable as per the legislation. There is nothing wrong in what I'm proposing. And it involves that all groups that are represented on the committees. Everybody has a chance to be taken the business of this council, which is what we want. Particularly when it comes to the licensing committee, those members who represent the town centre being able to represent the vast volume of licensable pubs and clubs and organisations within our town centre that are licensable, which is important. In terms of policy committees, it makes sure they can take part in policy. It makes sure that all of our representational scrutiny in terms of the groups is there as well. It just keeps things sensible, reasonable, and we continue the good work that we all believe we've been doing. And it works well. I think also, to be fair, in terms of the proportionality and all of it, it helps in terms of the vacancy issue. Because the problem we have at the moment is that there is a vacant position that cannot be counted in the proportionality, or shouldn't be. Because actually there's not 60 councillors, there's only 59. Therefore it is a proportionality of 59 until that vacancy is filled. It isn't filled, therefore we don't have that body to include in the calculations, or shouldn't have. So it's a very simple point that I think in terms of moving the vacancy to licensing, it doesn't fulfil the proportionality because it is a vacant post. It doesn't exist. There are only 59 of us to actually undertake the proportionality. And my proposal is very simple. Keep it as is and keep the council working as it has been in the last year into our final year before significant change.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Is that seconded? Councillor Cousins. Thank you. I'm inviting people now to make a contribution. Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm somewhat confused. Is Councillor Harvey talking about his original amendment, or is he talking about the email as of 16:44 this afternoon, where he has a slightly different variation on last year? Because as of last year, the one he sent at 16:44, I don't have an issue with. It's perfectly proportional, and if they want to go with that, they can go with that. The one that I heard, what he's just said, is we stick to the same as last year. What we can't help is the fact the elections have happened, and there is a change in the number of seats, and therefore we should not be fulfilling all the positions we were last year. One, because it undermines democracy. If the public have spoken and decided what the layout of this council should be, it'd be quite wrong for us to turn around and say, thank you for voting, but we're going to carry on anyway. And the other thing is, and I do applaud what he's been saying, but it seems to me what he's saying is we want the Liberal Democrats to take more seats on committee than perhaps they should do in exchange for Labour councillors. Now, obviously, Councillor Harvey is duty-bound to always do what's best for the borough, and the fact he thinks Lib Dem councillors on committees are better for the borough than Labour councillors is something I absolutely applaud. I'm not sure his own group share the view, but there we are. I think it's important we are proportional. The email he sent at 16:44, if that's the one he meant, I'm happy to go with that. I haven't got a problem with that. That's the one where we lose us. We have a place on licensing, but we don't have a place on audit and accounts and HR, because that's proportional. But we did have a place on HR and audit and accounts last year. Are you saying you want us to keep those places? Well, we had a place in audit and accounts last year. Proportionally, we shouldn't have this year. So I don't know what the amendment means. Bear in mind, I don't know whether he means we stay as last year or we go along with the email he sent out at 16:44 this afternoon. So I don't know how I can vote for an amendment. I don't understand.
Let me try to help. Could you please confirm, Councillor Saunders, which particular paper you were referring to?
Mr. Mayor, I'm referring to the paper which is appended to the council updates, amendments and questions which I received this evening. Therefore, the latest...
Page 6 and 7 of that document.
Particularly page 7 of that document,
Yeah.
yes. That's the one to which I was referring as being the one that's been tabled.
Thank you very much.
On the agenda.
Thank you. Could you be clearer now, please?
I will say exactly what I just said, that the committee structure and proportionality stays as it was last year.
As specified in this document.
No, as of last year. I mean no different. I mean exactly what I'm saying. The proportionality and committee structure stays as it was last year. I have not changed my position since the first email I sent on this matter.
No,
Explain. The email I received at 16:44 was from the head of legal services. That one I agree with. It wasn't Councillor Harvey who sent it, so I apologise if I inferred that he did. I still disagree with his amendment because it says that Liberal Democrats should be sitting where Labour councillors deserve to be sitting because they were elected to sit there. And as I say, that still stands. So I can't support the amendment because I think if we go by last year's, the councillor makeup of this council is different, and therefore it wouldn't be proportional, and therefore we couldn't support it because it's undemocratic. Thank you. I'm against the amendment. I'm not sure I'm in favour of that either, to be honest. But
okay. So, are we now ready to go through a vote?
Yeah.
On the amendment.
For the amendment and against.
Those for the amendment, please show now. Are we voting with these machines?
It's up to you. No one's asked for name votes. It can be show of hands. Can be show of hands.
Any show of hands is acceptable as long as you show your hands. Thank you. Okay, you can put your hands down now, thank you. Those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Do you mean it's? Do you mean it's not
Lost.
carried? That's lost.
It's not lost. Agreed? It's... Yeah. It's lost. Okay.
So back to the substantive.
So we now go back to the original motion, which is from Councillor Saunders, that we have a form of proportionality as set out in this paper.
Can we just be clear about the vacancy and whether it can be counted? Just to be clear on that point.
I'm sorry, you'll have to speak up a bit, please.
Can we just be clear on the vacancy and where it can be counted and not counted?
You want the numbers?
In terms of calculating the proportionality of seats allocated on the council, we have to look at the seats that are available on the council, and the council consists of 60 members, irrespective of whether those are filled or they are vacant. You're quite right in terms of the table. Whilst we've got a number listed next to a vacant, if there is no person filling that seat, then they can't be occupying that seat, but that is merely for arithmetical reasons that figure is there, but the proportionality calculations are based on the size of the council.
Yes, I haven't spoken on substantive. I don't know what happened to the head of legal's proposals at 1644 this afternoon, because they seem to be no sensible, they're proportional, we get a space on licensing, I think everyone's a winner. I don't know what happened to them, why they're not plan A, B or C, because it seems that they're probably the most appropriate so far. I just mentioned that.
The document you voted on was a document called Council Updates and Amendments, and the proportional rate is spelled out in page 7. That's what you voted on. I'm now going to ask the leader to sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't think I can add anything more to what's already been said. We're just to remind Council that the proposal is as of on page 7, with the amendment that the vacant seat moves from audit and accounts to licensing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can we just ask for absolute clarity? Can someone read out what the committee sizes are, just so we're clear what is what?
Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming just the committee size is not the proportions in each. Oh, right, here we go. Economic Planning and Housing consists of 11 members, 6 Conservative, 4 Labour, 1 Liberal Democrat. Community Environment and Partnerships consists of 11 members, 6 Conservatives, 4 Labour, 1 Liberal Democrat. The Manydown Overview Committee consists of 9 members, 5 Conservative, 3 Labour, 1 Liberal Democrat. Scrutiny Committee consists of 11 members, 6 Conservative, 3 Labour, 1 Liberal Democrat, 1 Independent. Development Control consists of 11 members, 6 Conservative, 4 Labour, 1 Liberal Democrat, Licensing will now consist of 11 members, 6 Conservatives, 4 Labour, and 1 vacant seat. Human Resources consists of 7 members, 4 Conservative, 3 Labour. Audit and Accounts consists of 9 members, can't add up, 5 Conservative, 4 Labour, and the Investigation and Disciplinary Committee consists of 7 members, 4 Conservative, 2 Labour, 1 Liberal Democrat.
Thank you very much. Are you ready to vote?
Yes. Sorry, can I just make an announcement?
Of course.
Mr. Mayor, I've just been advised that something that's not included on the table is the Standards Committee, and that will continue as 1 from Labour, 1 from Conservative, and 1 from Liberal Democrat. And we just need to include that for completeness.
Okay, we're going to vote now. Those in favour, please show now. Those against, please show now. That's carried. Thank you. Oh, where was I? Until I was so...
14, appointment of committees.
Yes, until I got to... It's okay. We're now at item 14, the appointment of committees. We have to appoint the members of the council to the following committees for the next council year, 2018-2019, in accordance with the wishes of the political groups and standing committees and substitutes. So, are we doing, shall we do chairs first? Hey?
Yeah, you could do committees first.
Okay, we have the members of the committees first. Have we got names for all the committees of the scrutiny committee? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the Scrutiny Committee, can I please nominate Councillors David Potter, Jack Cousins and Chloe Ashfield, with substitutes Mike Westbrook, Paul Harvey and Laura James. Scrutiny Committee, David Potter, Jack Cousins and Chloe Ashfield. Substitutes, Mike Westbrook, Paul Harvey, Laura James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the members of scrutiny, Councillor Faulkner, Capon, Tristan Robinson, Rebecca Bean, Rob Golding and Paul Miller, and reserves, Councillor Carruthers, Bowyer, George, Nick Robinson, Rattigan and Gardiner. So members, Councillor Faulkner, Capon, Tristan Robinson, Bean, Robert Golding and Miller, and reserves, Carruthers, Bowyer, George, Nick Robinson, Rattigan and Gardiner.
Thank you. Before we go any further, can I ask Councillor Harvey if you would do the reserves as well, please?
He did the reserves.
Okay.
He did the reserves.
Okay. You did? That's okay then. And now the Lib Dems?
The member of scrutiny will be Councillor Mackay, with the reserve being Councillor Parker.
Thank you. The Independent, do you have a view on which?
Yeah, I think it'll have to be me. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay. Now, I don't think we'd like you to submit a written list, but I think if the other members who read out lists could submit them to the clerks, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, if I may, I did mine early this morning, so they've got a list, the clerks.
Thank you very much. It's helpful to do that. Can you provide a written list at the end of the meeting to the clerks? Thank you. And the Lib Dems? Your short list? Yeah, we've got a list. Thank you. Just for clarity, Councillor Brown, have you provided a list for all the committees? Yes. And in writing to the clerks?
I have given a list, and in fact, the clerks have confirmed the list back to me as well, because that's what I'm reading out.
Thank you very much. Councillor James, have you got a list? I have a list. We have this list. Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
So just ask Councillor if he's got a list for all the committees that you can hand over at the end of the meeting.
So now is the time to read your list then?
To do that, for all of them or just for EPH?
Well, the first one we're doing, which is economic and planning.
Exactly, yeah. EPH is Councillor Harvey, Councillor James, Councillor Watts and Councillor Phillimore. Substitutes, Councillors Westbrook, Councillors Potter, Cousins and Mark Taylor. Okay.
Will you be able to provide a copy of that to the clerk later? This evening?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Councillor Harvey. We're now going to move to the next committee, which is the Community Environment and Partnerships. Can we have the names of the members? You've already provided yours, Councillor? And you have? You got the names, Councillor Harvey?
I do. For Communities, Environment and Partnerships Committee, Councillors Tony Jones, Colin Regan, Andy McCormick and Kim Taylor. Substitutes, Mark Taylor, Stephanie Grant, Ruth Cooper and Paul Harvey.
Thank you.
I don't think she got that.
Hey?
I don't think she got that. It was too fast. It's got to slow down.
Okay, okay. Sorry, we're going to have to ask you to read it again, please. A bit slower, if you would.
It's Connie's written all over it.
So I've got Tony Jones, Colin Regan, Andrew McCormick and Kim Taylor as members of the committee. Substitutes, Mark Taylor, Stephanie Grant, Ruth Cooper and Paul Harvey.
Thank you. Are we getting our children? Girls? Ladies? No? You okay? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, the next committee is Many Down Overview Committee. Councillor Brown, you provided a list. You provided a list, thank you. Councillor Harvey, could you read out your list, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Members of the committee, Councillors Stephanie Grant, Paul Harvey and Ruth Cooper. Substitutes, Councillors Mike Westbrook, David Potter and Jack Cousins. Have you got that? I'll type it up.
You done it? Got it?
Yep. Got it.
Okay, Development Control Committee. We had two lists. We need a third.
DC, Councillors Paul Harvey, David Potter, Mike Westbrook and Ruth Cooper. Substitutes, Jane Frankham, Janet Westbrook, Jack Cousins and Stephanie Grant.
Have you captured that, please? Yeah, thank you. The next committee is Licensing Committee. List.
Might as
Councillor
well just
Harvey.
keep standing. Councillors Angie Freeman, Mark Taylor, Paul Frankham and Tony Jones. Members of the committee. Substitutes. Councillors Jack Cousins, George Hood, Colin Regan and Colin Phillimore.
Thank you. We're nearly there, don't worry. All right, thank you. Human Resources. Councillor Harvey.
Human Resources, Councillors Janet Westbrook, David Potter.
No, we can't hear you, please.
Sorry, the microphone wasn't on. There we go. Councillors Janet Westbrook, David Potter and Paul Harvey. Substitutes, Councillors Mike Westbrook, Kim Taylor and Tony Jones.
You got that? Yeah, thank you. Audit and Accounts Committee, we start with you, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. On the committee, Councillors Kim Taylor, Councillor Janet Westbrook, David Potter, Paul Harvey. Substitutes, Mike Westbrook, Colin Phillimore, Tony Jones and Stephanie Grant.
Thank you. And you submitted a list, and so have yourself. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Penultimate Standard Committee.
Councillor Harvey on the committee, Councillor Jack Cousins substitute.
No? Yes? Thank you. And the Investigating and Disciplinary Committee, IDC. Got a name or names?
As was, Councillors Gary Watts and Jack Cousins on committee. Substitutes, Councillors Chloe Ashfield and Tony Jones. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please nominate Councillor David Potter?
Any other nominations? You prepared to accept, Councillor Potter?
Is it seconded?
Is it a seconder, Councillor Harvey? Yeah. Councillor Cousins, yeah. And you accept, thank you. The next committee that needs a chair is the Economic Planning and Housing Committee. And we have the membership of the committee, so do we have a nomination for chair of the committee? Councillor Simon Brown.
I would like to nominate Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Seconded? Yes, Councillor Terry Reid. Any other nominations? No. Moving on to the Community Environment and Partnership Committee. Nomination?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councillor Rob Golding.
Any other nominations? Is that seconded? Yes. And I didn't say agreed for the last one, so I'll do both. All right? There is Councillor Christian Robinson and Councillor Rob Golding. Are you now agreeing? Yes? Thank you. The Mandydown Overview Committee. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Rebecca Bean.
Any other nominations? Is that the nomination seconded? Yes. Thank you. We've done any other nomination. Is that agreed? Thank you. The Development Control Committee? Councillor Bound?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You didn't even look then. I would like to nominate Councillor Paul Miller.
Is that seconded? Is it agreed? Thank you. The Chair of Licensing? Councillor Bound?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Diane Taylor.
Seconded? Yeah. Agreed? Yeah. Thank you. Well done, Diane. And the last one is, the next one, should I say, is Human Resources. Councillor Bound?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Venetia Rowland.
Who?
Councillor Venetia Rowland.
Sorry, would you say again, please, Councillor Bound?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Rowland.
Thank you. Who? Okay, that's good. Where's my pad? Right. Proportionality. Committee. Okay.
Want to find me to come back?
Say again?
Need to come back. So, is that seconded and agreed? You haven't said agreed yet on that one.
Has Mrs. Rowland been seconded? Yes? Is it agreed? Thank you. Audit and Accounts Committee? Councillor Bound?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Roger Gardner.
Seconded? Agreed? Thank you. Standards Committee?
Mr. Mayor, I have great pleasure in nominating Mr. Peter Mu Obi to the post of Chairman of Standard Committee. He has served us in an excellent manner in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patti. Seconded? Seconded? Yes. Councillor Harvey, you want to have another nominee?
No.
Seconded.
You're seconding? Okay. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay. The Investigatory and Disciplinary Committee. Nominations, please, Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For the final time, I'd like to nominate Councillor Rob Golding.
Seconded? Yes. Agreed? Thank you. Please note that at the first committee meeting of these particular bodies, the first part of the agenda will be you will have to nominate a vice chair for that committee. You understand? Yeah. Okay. The next one is the appointment to joint bodies. The first one is the Joint Medidown Committee to appoint 4 members. The membership will come from the following wards: Buckskin, North Oakley, North Waltham, Sherburn St John, Wilkesbury, Kempshott and Rookstown. They're the coterminous points which Medidown meets the borough's wards. Do we have names, please? Councillor Harvey?
Nominate Councillor Angie Freeman.
Who?
Councillor Freeman.
Okay. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Isaac, Councillor Eachus and Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Could you speak up a bit, please? The mayor was a bit hard of hearing.
Certainly, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Isett, Councillor Eachus and Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Thank you very much. Any other nominations for anyone? Do you have a nomination?
No, but if you speed things up, I'll second all of them.
Thank you very much. Is that agreed? Okay. Crime and Disorder Joint Scrutiny Panel, committee these days. 3 members to the Joint Scrutiny Committee following the merger of the 3 community safety partnerships. And they were Hart, Rushmore and Basingstoke and Dean. The membership to consist of 2 Tories, 1 Labour, to provide a balance across the 3 authorities. Councillor Harvey, do you have a nomination?
Councillor Mark Taylor.
Yeah, Mark Taylor. Thank you. Councillor Bound?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Bowyer and Councillor Sherlock.
Sherlock, yeah. What was the other name?
Sherlock and Bowyer.
Oh, yeah. Any other nominations? And those seconded? Thank you. Agreed? Hampshire Police and Crime Panel. They're appointed for a 4-year term and they don't need to be reappointed this year. So for information purposes, there currently are Councillor S. Bound and Councillor Earl Gardner. That agreed and accepted? Thank you. Now we come to appointments to outside bodies. Don't we have a list? Hey? Yeah, that's the back, yeah. Yeah, I know where it is now. Outside bodies. Did you provide a list, Councillor Simon Brown?
I did do everything, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Have you got a list? Did you got it in front of you? Would I like to share it, please?
I don't know. Till I've read my list out, I don't know, do I?
There were different varieties here, so we can't go on block for all of them.
Okay.
So
I'll read out my list if
can
someone's
we
got a pen
take
ready.
the ones that are by exception?
What are we doing here?
For example, the AWE Local Liaison Committee, number to be appointed 2, and there's no time limit. We've currently got Councillor Gardner, Councillor Richards and Councillor M. Bound. Do you have a nomination for any of that? AWE, no? Okay. Councillor, do you have a nomination? He's already there. Councillor Simon Brown?
Mr Mayor, if I could just, I think to make a helpful point, I believe the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives have produced lists which we've got on our papers, and I just suspect Councillor Harvey may have some additions which will make it clear whether there's a vote required or not.
I'm in your hands, Mr Mayor. I'll go through it in any way you want me to. So if you want to read out the nominations I've got down the list, I'm happy to do that. And where there's an election, there's an election.
And that's as it should be.
Yeah. So the first one I have in front of me, if there is no other nomination from the Labour group, which is the Basingstoke and Dean Community Leisure Trust, Councillor Connie Regan. Yeah, he's on there now. So if there's no challenge, then Colin continues.
Thank you. Anyone else want to nominate anything for this particular category? So is Councillor Colin Regan agreed? Agreed, thank you. Carry on, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Basingstoke and District Sports Trust Limited, Councillor Tony Jones.
Tony Jones. Thank you. Any other nomination for that category? Councillor Simon Bound.
My nomination, Councillor Rebecca Bean.
Tony Jones. Well, is Rebecca Bean seconded? Yes. Yes, thank you. And Councillor Jones, Councillor Harvey, is Tony Jones seconded? Yes. Thank you.
I declare interest in that.
What form of interest are you declaring? Non-pecuniary. Thank you. So we have a vote. Yeah. Those in favour of Councillor Tony Jones? Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Bean? Okay. Okay, have we got a number? Yeah. 28 for, 20.
And how many for Councillor Jones?
23 against. 28 for, 23 against. Yes.
I wonder if I could ask, which I'd done at the last council, it seems strange to me that we only have one person on that board from Basingstoke and Dean. We do, a lot of us have done a lot of work with the Sports Trust over the years, and I think perhaps, I don't know how you feel over this side, it would be good to get a diverse view sometimes of what's going on. So therefore it should be open to perhaps 3 groups or even 2 groups, or us and you, if you know what I mean. I wonder if you could write to the Sports Council and ask if we'd have an extra 1 or 2 on the board.
Mr Mayor, I think it's very important that we ask the outside bodies how many representatives they'd like from the Borough Council. I think it's very important for lots of these boards of governors and trustees that they get the input that they require from us as a Borough Council.
I do understand, but I also I believe you ought to understand also that all of the outside bodies are not just at your disposal, and never should be.
Mr Mayor, if I may, I don't think I said that.
Sorry, just on that note, if you are looking at some of the other outside bodies, I find it very odd that there's not a place for a councillor on Sovereign. So I wonder whether I could leave that with the administration to look at possibilities of there being someone that represents the council on the Sovereign Association.
The next item on the agenda is statutory advice. What are you saying? What are you saying? All right.
Can I, Mr Mayor, nominate Councillor David Leakes?
Dave Leakes. Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Jack Cousins.
Thank you.
Councillor Gavin James.
Gavin James. Thank you. Have those been seconded? Yes, seconded. Gavin. Councillor Harvey, have you a seconder? Yeah. And Councillor Leakes? Yeah, thank you. We've got 3 vacancies and 3 places. Is that acceptable? Agreed? Yes. Thank you. The Basingstoke Musical Festival Committee, we have 2 places currently filled and 1 vacancy. Any nominations?
Nominations of those filled is Councillor Freeman and Councillor McCormick.
Freeman and McCormick. Okay. Anyone else want to nominate any other body? No? Okay. We have 3 vacancies and 2 places filled. Is that acceptable? Okay, thank you. Basingstoke Rape and Sexual Crisis Centre. We have no councillor currently. Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Cooper.
Councillor? Okay. Seconded? Yes. Any other nominations? Is that agreed? Basingstoke Voluntary Action. One vacancy and one currently filled, and it's Robert Golding. Do you have a nomination?
I wanted to nominate Councillor Robert Golding.
Yeah, that's fine. Seconded? Agreed? Basingstoke Youth Action Trust Limited. We have one person on the board at the moment, and we have a vacancy. Councillor? Yeah?
Can I nominate Councillor Simon Bound, please?
And then to Councillor Harvey.
Give me a minute now. Who seconded that one? Terry. Thank you. We have another vacancy. Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Kim Taylor.
Okay. Kim. Seconded? Seconded? Thank you. Are they agreed? Great, thank you. Clare Community School Management Committee. We have one person, Councillor Isa, that is currently on it. Councillor Bound.
Could I nominate Councillor Faulkner, please?
Faulkner. Seconded? Thank you. Any other nominations? That agreed? District Council Network, currently Councillor Saunders. I think you sit on that as a council leader. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bound?
I was going to nominate Councillor Saunders.
Thank you. Seconded? Done. Councillor Saunders, yeah. Any other nominations? Everest Community Academy Management Group. Currently we have Councillor Jane Frankham and Councillor S. Frost. Two places. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of order that I was actually replaced by Councillor Paul Miller at the early part of last year, I think it was.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Paul Miller.
Councillor Jane Frank.
I was going to nominate Councillor Paul Miller, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Sanders and Councillor Reid.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? They seconded? Agreed? Thank you. Hampshire Building Preservation Trust Limited. Currently, one vacancy currently filled by Councillor Marilyn Tucker. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Tucker, please.
Councillor Tucker, no problem. Is that seconded? Any other nominations? Is that agreed? Thank you. Herbal Plantation Local Nature Reserve Management Committee. Councillor J. Isaac is currently the representative. Can we have nominations, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Isaac.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you. We'll be finished by midnight, don't worry. Hurst Centre Management Committee. Currently, Councillor J. Richards and M. Tucker. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Richards and Councillor Tucker, please.
Thank you. Are they seconded? Yeah, thank you. Any other nominations? Are they agreed? Thank you. Integra North Energy from Waste Plant Liaison Panel. Currently is Councillor J. Bowyer. Any nominations?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councillor Bowyer.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Any other nominations? That agreed? Thank you. Local Government Association National General Assembly. Currently is Councillor Saunders. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Sanders.
Seconded? Agreed? Is agreed? Yeah. Thank you. Loddon Social Enterprise Limited. Currently is Councillor Cubitt. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Cubitt.
Seconded? Any other nominations? That agreed? Thank you. North Hampshire Area Road Safety Committee Council. Two candidates currently, Gardner and Carruthers. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Gardner and Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you very much. Are they seconded? Thank you.
Go on, Mr. Mayor. Let's have an election. Councillor Andy McCormick.
So we have 2 vacancies and 3 nominees. We take a breath for a moment. So we'll take the Councillor Roger Gardner first. Those who want Roger Gardner, vote for him now, please. Two, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 28. Thank you. Those who want to vote for Councillor Carruthers? Thank you. 28. And Councillor Andy McCormack. Thank you. Are we counting? 23, 21? 21. Okay. 28, 28, 21. Or 28, 28, and 211. With 21. Thank you.
So that's Gardner, Carruthers.
Gardner, Carruthers, and McCormack is not on the list. Thank you. Octopus Children's Centre. Currently is Councillor Harvey.
I'm really sad to stand up and say that in line with what has happened to our children's centres across the borough, i.e. they have all been closed and we have lost them all, we no longer have the Octopus Children's Centre in Norden, so I cannot be a member of its board, no matter how much I want to be. What a disgrace, Mr Mayor. What an absolute disgrace.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. The Pamber Forest Local Nature Reserve Advisory Committee. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Gardner and Councillor Richards.
Seconded. Any other nominations? They agreed? Thank you. Proteus Theatre Company Limited. We have one vacancy or one nominee. Currently, it's Councillor Terry Reid. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Reid.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Any other nominations? Is that agreed? Thank you. Relate North Hampshire Limited. We have one vacancy, and we have Councillor Mr. Chris Connor, who used to be a county councillor. Councillor Harvey.
Can I nominate former borough and county councillor Mr Chris Connor?
Thank you. Anyone else? No other nominations? We leave the other place vacant then. Okay. Is that agreed? Thank you. Vivid, previously Sentinel Housing Association. According to this list, we have 2 nominations on the board. Is that correct? Councillor Golding and Sherlock. Golding, are you on the board there? You're not. Sherlock, Councillor Sherlock, are you on the board? Vivid used to be Sentinel Housing.
I'm on it at present.
You are, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you attend the meetings?
There hasn't been a meeting.
This is a very large housing association that doesn't have meetings. It's okay, I'll go to Simon Bound, if I may. You would nominate, please.
If I may, Mr Mayor, thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor Sherlock and Councillor Frost.
Sherlock and Frost. Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For the board, I would like to nominate first Councillor Laura James from one of the wards that does have an awful lot of vivid housing in it.
And those people seconded. Was your second nomination a deputy?
It's for the board and then for the deputy, but let's take the board first.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So yours were seconded. Have you got a second, Councillor Harvey? Yes, you have. So, we have 3 names. Yes, Councillor Simon.
I'd just like to make it clear, if I may, Mr. Mayor, that it's probably a little misleading on the sheet that our nomination from the board is Councillor Frost and our deputy is Councillor Sherlock.
That's helpful, thank you. Sherlock, the deputy. Yeah.
So it's Frost versus James for the board seat.
Say again? Your nominee seconded? Yes. Your nominee seconded? Thank you. So we have a vote. Those in favour of yourselves? Sorry, no.
Councillor Frost.
Councillor Frost. Thank you. All right? Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor Frost, therefore, is the nominee.
No. Councillor.
No, sorry, we have to put the Councillor Frost up against the Labour person, Councillor Laura James. Is that seconded? Yeah. Okay. So we're still voting now on the principal nominee. Okay? 1 for Frost, we've done. Councillor James. Those in favour, please. Thank you. It's okay. We still can't make up 28. Thank you very much. 20. Yeah. 28 versus 23.
So Frost has it.
Councillor Frost gets it.
So now it's James versus Sherlock for deputy.
Yeah. So now we need to agree a deputy. The current nominee is Councillor Frost. He's just been elected. And we have two nominees for deputy. Councillor Laura James and Councillor Sherlock, isn't it? Sherlock, yeah. Do you have any nominees?
Yeah. I had Councillor Laura James, who will attend a meeting.
Yeah. Okay. They're all seconded? Yours is seconded, yes? Okay. Do you want to vote for Laura James as deputy? Thank you. Just to mix it up a bit. Thank you very much. In favour of Councillor Sherlock as deputy, please. Thank you very much. Okay. Now we have the Silchester, the vote at 28-23. Too late. Oh, sorry.
So Sherlock.
For Sherlock. Sherlock is the first, is the deputy. Now, Silchester Roman Town Advisory Committee panel. Currently is Councillor Marilyn Tucker. Councillor Frost, Councillor Bound.
I think that's a thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Tucker, if I may.
Thank you. Any other nominations? You've seconded it, yeah. That agreed? Agreed. South East England Councils, currently Councillor Saunders. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Sanders.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Is that seconded? Agreed. That agreed? Thank you. Cadleian District Citizens Advice Bureau, currently is Mr. Councillor M. Bound.
Nominate Councillor Michael Bound to continue. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other nominations? That agreed? Thank you. Cadleian District Community Association Executive Committee, currently is Councillor Marilyn Tucker. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Tucker.
Thank you. Was that seconded? Yeah. Any other nominations? No? That agreed? Thank you. The next one is Testbourne Community Centre Management Committee. Currently is Councillor Ashfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nominate Councillor Ashfield.
Thank you. Seconded? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor George.
That's seconded? User seconded? Yes. Okay. We have to have a vote. There's only 2 people for 1 place. Would you like to vote for Councillor George? Thank you. 28, yeah. Those in favour of Councillor Ashfield, Ashfield, yes. Thank you very much. The vote is 28, 23.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor George is the nominated person. Okay, Tourism South East. Currently David Leakes, Councillor David Leakes. Councillor Simon Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor David Leakes.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Any other nominations? That agreed? Thank you. The next one is the trustees of Basingstoke Common. One is the mayor. Another one is CouncillorOnnelly Cubitt. And the third one is Councillor S. Goddison. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Cubitt and Councillor Goddison, please.
Thank you. Are they seconded? Thank you. Would you like to nominate the mayor?
If it's required, I'll nominate them.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Don't you dare. Don't you dare vote against me. Would you like to vote for your
Can I interject, Mr. Mayor?
Exactly.
I think it's a legal obligation on your part, in your role, to be the third party in the trust.
It comes with the role. I'm sure you're right. So you don't get to vote for me. Thank you very much. I accept. Can we vote on Councillor Cubitt and Goddison? Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you. The next one is Whitchurch Millennium Green Trust. It was Councillor Keith Watts. Does anybody have a nomination?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Chloe Ashfield.
Ashfield, you said? Yeah. Nomination, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor George.
Okay, is you seconded? Yeah, you seconded, yes. So we have one vacancy, 2 people. Could you please vote for Councillor Ashfield first, please? Thank you. And we now get to Councillor George. Councillor George is elected. Thank you. Winchurch Silk Mill. One nominee currently, and is Councillor Ashfield. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor George.
Seconded? Thank you.
Nominate Councillor Chloe Ashfield.
Yeah. Seconded? Seconded. We have 2 votes. Councillor George, those in favour? Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Mr. Chloe Ashfield? Twenty-three, 28? You pick it up in the end, don't you? Thank you very much. The answer is, the vote result is 28-23 in favour of Councillor George.
I wonder if we could write to the silk mill, because I don't know whether people realise there's been a major fit out in there and they're going to be reopening. I'm sure Councillor Ashfield has been working hard on the board with them, and it would help if, you know, if you get someone who's doing a job, we should try to maintain that job and make things work easily. So if we have another councillor on there for that next period, I think it would make it work a lot better. Thank you.
Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to build on that point, I wonder whether we could ask Whitchurch Silk Mill whether they'd prefer the term to be longer than 1 year.
We will ask 2 questions, if it's okay with you. We'll ask them nominations every 2 years and two nominees, if we can. Is that okay? Thank you. So we'll ask the silk mill if they can go longer than 1 year, and we'll ask the silk mill if we can have 2 nominees. Is that okay? Thank you. But in the meantime, we've got the vote on Councillor George. Those in favour? Oh, I've done that already. There's 2 more. 2 more. We're nearly there. North Wessex Downs area of outstanding national beauty. Okay, I'll do that next. Councillor Miller is the current nominee. Can I have nominations, please? Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Any other nomination? That's seconded? Yeah. We've only got 1 nominee, and so Simon Bound, Paul Miller is agreed. Okay? I missed out one, which was the Young People's Information. Currently Councillor Hannah Golding. Nominations, please. Councillor Bound.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Hannah Golding.
Thank you. And anything? No? Any other nomination? Is that nomination seconded? There's only one nomination, so there's no need for a vote. Hannah Golding is nominated, is accepted. And finally, the Whitchurch Youth Centre Trust. It was Councillor Keith Watts. Nominations, please. Councillor.
Councillor Chloe Ashfield.
Thank you. Any other nominations? No other nominations, so I declare Councillor Ashfield. Councillor Ashfield to be approved. Agreed? Thank you.
You jumped over some at the beginning.
Yeah, I did.
So
You would believe it.
You've got to go back and do this.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe we've had a vote yet on the AWE Local Liaison Committee.
Yeah, we'll start out with the Oldwoods Education Trust. We have a vacancy and we have Councillor Gardner. Nominations, please. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Harvey? No. No. There's only one vacancy. There's only one nomination, so we approve Councillor Gardner. AWE Local Liaison Committee, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Bound. Sorry.
It's all right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy to work through the rest of the Conservative councillors as far as name goes. I would like to nominate Councillor Gardner and Councillor Richards, if I may.
Councillor?
Gardner and Councillor Richards.
Richards, right, thank you. Yes. Yes, Councillor?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Bound and hope he confuses all the Conservatives. Thank you.
Any other nominations? Are your nominations seconded? Yeah. Thank you. Is your nomination seconded? Seconded. Seconded. Thank you. Okay. 2 places, 3 votes. Only vote twice, please. Those in favour of Roger Gardner? Not even half past 8. Thank you. Those in favour of J. Richards, Councillor J. Richards? Thank you. And those in favour, no, you've had 2 votes if you remember, don't forget. Councillor Bound?
Michael.
Well, the answer therefore is 28, 28 and 23. Okay?
Gardner and Richards.
Yeah, Gardner and Richards. And we have 2 others that we haven't done yet. The Barlows Park Management Association and Tadley. Councillor Bound.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Richards, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? No other nominations. I declare Councillor Richards accepted. Thank you. And finally, Basingstoke Air Cadets, 443, Basingstoke Air Training Co. Currently, it's Councillor Paul Miller. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Finally, I'd like to make my last nomination of the evening for Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Seconded, yes? Good, thank you. Any other nominations? If not, I declare Councillor Miller accepted. Thank you. That was a trek. We finished? Hey, have we finished? Section 18 of the agenda is the Section 151 officer. Currently, it's obviously held by Kevin Jaquest, but Kevin is retiring early by the end of June, and we need to arrange to get an interim 151 officer in the meantime. I'm going to move, and I believe the Deputy Mayor will second, that we agree that we will appoint an interim 151 officer, and that in the meantime, we'll refer the matter to the Human Resources Committee in order that they carry out the selection. Because otherwise, the 151 officer will be leaving and they won't be replaced before the next full council meeting. Only full council meeting can normally do this. So the proposal is that the appointment be referred to the HR committee and that it be carried out as soon as possible. And we want to speed up this process. The word here is expedite. Right, we want to speed up the process. And we have to do it before the next council meeting, because otherwise we'll end up without a 151 officer, and you can't have a council without a 151 officer. Go on.
Can I give some words of clarification?
Of course.
This is very formal.
Of course. The Chief Executive would want to say a few words about this, please.
Members, just building on Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, in terms of the order paper in front of you, Philip Hood, who is the current Deputy Section 151 officer, would become interim Section 151 officer with effect from the 25th of June. And then in addition to that, a recruitment process is underway in terms of an interim Executive Director of Finance and Resources, which will be dealt with by the HR committee next week. And it's about delegating the function from full council because director appointments, even interim director appointments, are normally made by full council on the recommendation of HR committee. So you've got two propositions in front of you this evening. One is Philip Hood, who is the current Deputy Section 151 officer, to become the interim as on the order paper. And then in relation to the recruitment process underway for an interim Executive Director of Finance and Resources, for full council to use its authority to delegate that authority to HR committee in this particular instance. Thank you.
Thank you. So is that clear? Yes, Councillor Gardner.
Speaking to the motion, I'd just like to say that I think the decision to appoint Philip Hood on a temporary basis is an excellent one. He's a good officer, and HR will be working on this next week.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Anyone else want to say anything? In which case, the motion is before you to refer or to delegate to the HR committee from full council the appointment of the interim Director of Finance and Resources. That's the motion. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. We're getting there.
And to appoint Philip as interim.
Yeah. And that includes appointing Philip as the interim 151 officer. Okay? The annual review, item 19, the annual review of the council constitution. The report of the Cabinet Member for Regulatory Services, Councillor Eaches, to put the recommendation seconder and debate and sum up our is it agreed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had an all-party constitutional working group, and we've considered changes to the constitution. It's quite a light touch review. Since the meetings, we've had a number of them. There's a query arisen on an aspect of Part 4 of the rules that deal with how the council and committee meetings operate. Therefore, to ensure that we have cross-party support and to make sure that we have proper discussions about this issue, I propose that we take that back to the working group and then bring that one part back to this council for the July meeting. Those parts that we would bring back are detailed on pages 37 and 38 of the report pack and set out in paragraphs 2.1 to 2.13. All other changes detailed in the report, I understand, are agreed on a cross-party basis following the Constitutional Working Party, and I therefore move recommendations 1, 3, 4 and 5 in the report.
There's a few things to pick up on if I can, Mr. Mayor. Just to be absolutely clear, I've got 9 points. I'm just going to read them out and hope you can capture them. On page 48, paragraph 8.10, at the Constitutional Working Group meeting of the 28th of March 2018, it was agreed that this paragraph would be amended to remove the statement that the consent of the meeting would be required. That needs to be actioned. Number 2, page 51, paragraph 10.2, little a. At the Constitutional Working Group meeting in March, it was agreed that the paragraph would be deleted in the same way that it is on page 54, paragraph 2, little m has been deleted. Number 3, on page 52, paragraph D, there needs the word member to be crossed out to maintain consistency. Number 4, again, the paragraph relating to paragraph needs to be, the member again on the same page needs to be just deleted to give consistency. Page 52, paragraph 11.3. The timescale for notice of questions is incorrect in this paragraph. The Constitutional Working Group agreed that the timescale as noon Tuesday, not 4 p.m. on the previous Friday. Number 6, 57, paragraph 16.1. The Constitutional Working Group agreed to add the words "all legislation" in this sentence so that it should read, "unless this constitution or legislation provides otherwise." It was deemed relevant. Other issues may lead to votes to as such, and the legislation always dictates. Number 7, paragraph 66, paragraph 9a. Again, the Constitutional Working Group at its meeting agreed that the words, to add in the words, "unless it becomes inquorate," should be removed, and that the existing wording should remain because there are a number of reasons why a meeting may adjourn, not simply if it was inquorate. That was agreed at the Constitutional Working Group. Number 8, paragraph 104, page 104, paragraph 20.3. The final sentence in this paragraph refers to advice from a political assistant. That sentence needs to be removed. 106, paragraph 22. The final sentence of the paragraph refers to advice of a political assistant. And again, the sentence needs to be removed. If those can be incorporated as points to tidy up, it would be good to do so. There may already be if they've been picked up in the meanwhile, but nonetheless we picked them out of earlier papers.
So, Councillor Eaches, can you confirm that these issues will be referred back?
I think a number of them I can agree, but obviously sat here without, it's quite difficult, but I do recognise a number of what you said, and I do agree that probably most of them are okay, but I don't want to stand here now and say every single one. So can I agree that you send that to me, Marie and Bapinda maybe, and then we can, if they're agreed because they're from the minutes and it's what is on the notes, we can amend it, and then anything that I don't think is agreed, we can bring back in the July one. Is that possible? Because especially we did definitely agree that we wouldn't change the timing for questions and things. So, and something else you said about legislation, I remember all of that, but I just haven't got it all in front of me.
Can I thank the Cabinet Member and would agree with that if we can agree what we agree, and anything we don't agree, let's take that to CWP. Thank you. Yeah, I'll provide that in paper form for you. Thank you.
So you've accepted that, Councillor Harvey? Yeah. Fine, thank you. Okay. So it's going back to the working party, to the constitutional working party.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. So I'd like to move 1, 3, 4 and 5, but I take on board Councillor Harvey's amendments. They probably are fine, and if they are, once I've looked at the minutes and sat down and gone through them, we can amend them under number 5. But if there's anything that we feel is contentious or is not minuted that I can't change, I'll bring it back as the chair to the next constitutional working party and then back to this council in the July meeting.
Thank you. Is that clear as mud? Thank you, Councillor Eaches. We have to vote on this now. Is it seconded? Yes? Are you ready to vote? Let's vote then. To refer the issue back to the Constitutional Working Party, point 2 of the recommendation. Most of the rest of 1, 3, 4 and 5 will stand. Yeah. Okay? Those in favour? You're very muted. Thank you. Thank you.